Okay, welcome back to part 3 of interview with the hydrogen man, Greg. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming. We've been spending quite some time together now, and I'm wondering how many people are actually going to go through this whole hydrogen marathon, that like part 1, 2, and 3 interview. But I bet there's some who's going to be like, "This is awesome," and they can't get enough. I already got a few emails like that. So
Me too.
Good. That's awesome.
That's something I was going to say. I think you have a really amazing audience, actually, and I've had a lot of positive emails, which is really nice because you get positive and negative stuff, and it's been really cool that people are enjoying the information. So it's been awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, and so just a few hours before this interview, I was actually laying. So I'm in Ecuador at the equator, up in high altitude, 1,400 meters altitude, at 12 o'clock noon, out in the sun, getting a suntan. And because I want the vitamin D3, I want all the good stuff from the light, right? And I was laying there in the sun and I was thinking, so today we're going to talk about the spiritual implications of hydrogen. And it feels like I have like this massive download I just want to give out, and I'm wondering how that's going to unfold today. But anyway, I was just laying in the sun and I was thinking, hydrogen, where do I begin? While I was laying there staring at the sun, getting baked in the sun. And then I was like, this is a hydrogen star. We begin with the sun. Yeah. I mean, so the sun, like, what a powerful thing, right? The sun, that's hydrogen. It's a hydrogen sun. So I feel just to begin this interview, talking about the importance of hydrogen and the spiritual aspects of hydrogen, and why we should pay attention to hydrogen. What's the big deal with hydrogen, right? Oh, okay, besides all the healing stuff and all that stuff, why is it so essential? Well, you will be dead without, let me put it this way, because the sun wouldn't be shining without the hydrogen. And so I just want to begin this interview here, or it's going to be more like a talk, ping pong, back and forth. But I just want to begin with a conversation I had with Patrick Flanagan, who is like the water man, the hydrogen man, like way back. He was writing about this and making stuff going on a long time ago. He was living in this town. He just passed away not long ago. I had the pleasure and honor to hang out with him, and this guy is a genius. And but anyway, he told me something crazy I want to share. He said to me, Joshua, they actually measured, so the photonic light coming out of the sun, the photons are actually traveling in a spiral movement. And when they're coming out in this spiral movement, they're actually coming out in specific sacred geometric patterns. And the pattern is a Sri Yantra. And I'm gonna move my webcam to Sri Yantra. This is the Sri Yantra. This is the pattern. So hydrogen is coming out in this pattern, the one you see in the circle, not everything around it.
Yeah.
But this is actually the pattern of the hydrogen coming to Earth from the sun. And so when he said that, I was just like blown away. I don't know how, he explained to me scientifically how this works and all that stuff, and I'm totally butchering it right now because there's a lot to it, and I can't repeat it because I'm not Patrick Flanagan, but I was just tripping on that. And I think so while I was laying in the sun, I was like, oh my God, it's a hydrogen star. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm getting all this sacred geometric patterns imprinted into my body-mind complex here. So anybody who thinks hydrogen is not a spiritual molecule and not essential, co-essential in the human evolution and ascension of the future of humanity is missing out on a few very obvious facts. So I just wanted to begin here with that. But I also remember you told me a lot of interesting facts about hydrogen, and you read something about hydrogen in the Bible, or what was it?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about hydrogen and the sun too. I mean, one of the interesting facts was I found out, I actually found this out from some Japanese scientists, when they noticed that if you fully saturate hydrogen within water, they noticed that the hydrogen just for some reason was almost drawn to the surface of the water, and it would literally it would be like dancing and hovering upon excuse me, upon the water. And so, oh man, I just got a little saliva down the wrong pipe. And so I think it must have been, they didn't think it was anything particularly important when they told me that. I just want to know everything about hydrogen. So I always ask them if they ever learn anything new, just to let me know. And I was, somehow I must have stumbled upon it. I don't know how I stumbled, because I just read stuff everywhere and things are always coming my way. And there's this verse in the Bible in Genesis where it says, and God's Spirit was upon the waters. And immediately I was like, wait a second. I think this might be really important, because what I started thinking about was, God's Spirit. If God's Spirit is anything, I would think that it's life, like the source of life itself.
Yeah.
And if you study creation, like Earth and how everything works, it ultimately led me to the sun, because I was trying to figure out how water really gets purified. And what I noticed is it's the sun that hits the ocean, heats the ocean, steam rises, and then this is the interesting part. I started learning about a lot of different particles, that the purer they are, the higher they rise. I don't know if you knew this, and this is obviously a whole science thing.
The purer the steam is?
The purer the particles. So like, for example, like chlorine gas, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chlorine gas doesn't rise very high. Okay. So as the clouds would rise up, they would leave the impurities behind.
Ah, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So when the clouds reach super, super high, they're pure, they're clean. And that's why when they come down as rain or snow is basically distilled water, which is 99.9% pure, super clean water, right? And then, have you ever heard that old adage about pure as white as snow or something like that?
Yeah.
So it either comes down as rain or snow, and then obviously when it comes down as snow, eventually it makes its way down the mountain, picking up minerals. It's getting structured and doing all the things that it does going down the sacred mountain. And so this whole process literally can't happen without the star, without the sun. It all really begins with that. So it really does begin with hydrogen,
Mm-hmm.
And then the second step in the whole equation is the water. So water is very important, but obviously the sun is kind of I think it's always important to go to the seed, to go to the core of where something originates from.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately that's how it starts. And then obviously there's a cycle. And of course the sun, we don't just need it for cleaning our water and moving everything around, but obviously the temperatures also create the movement of the wind, and of course just all the movement, basically, in my opinion, all the movement that ultimately needs to happen starts with hydrogen. It starts with the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And movement is life, and there's another verse, and obviously we might run into some controversial stuff, but there was another verse, like when Jesus was talking and he said, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. So but of course, if you keep reading that passage, eventually he actually says, these words I do not speak of my own accord. So it really sounds to me like Spirit is speaking through him, and the Spirit is saying, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life, and so it's that life, that essence of all life, and his Spirit, in my opinion, when it's hovering upon the waters, it's the life source. And if you look at what hydrogen ultimately is doing, and I stumbled upon all this because of the amount of life it brings to the body. I don't know if you've ever seen my video where I have the live blood analysis. It brings so much life to the blood.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a verse about that too. Life is in the blood. And when you bring hydrogen in, all of a sudden the blood just begins to move like crazy. It's almost hard to believe I don't know if I told you about the lady. There was a lady one time who contacted me who was a pharmacist. And she saw some of this footage and she was questioning me about it. She was putting me through the ringer on this one. And it's like, how do you know? Were you in the lab? Did you do the test? How do you know? You know? And how do you know they're just not lying to you? And I'm just like, man, okay, I wasn't in the lab. You know, what do you want me to do? But she ended up repeating the same test. She ended up getting a hydrofix, just like the machine I have. And she took it to a lab and she had the whole same exact test done. And then, of course, she contacted me back. She goes, oh, my God, the results were exactly the same. And she had actually sent me footage. I don't even know if I still have it. I have to go and look. But she actually sent me footage also of their live blood analysis. So hydrogen appears to be life. It's the source of all life.
Amazing. So
yeah,
you also mentioned to me at one point that hydrogen is moving up towards space in the atmosphere with 50 miles per hour.
Yeah, so it's a really, really light molecule. So back to the part where we were talking about where like certain particles rise, and I noticed that the more pure they are, the higher they rise. Mm-hmm. And so what I noticed about hydrogen, not quite at 50 miles an hour, it's like 40 something miles an hour, it rises so high, like it rises higher than anything there is, all the way back up to the cosmos or the heavens. In my opinion, it's going back home. You know,
yeah. So it's you can say it's an ascension molecule. It goes into space. It wants to free itself into the void, into space, right? So that's what this molecule is doing. And then you talk to me about that oxygen. If you put pure oxygen into a balloon, it falls to the ground. It's heavier than even the atmosphere.
So this is just one of my opinions too, based on a lot of my research and my own work, that like if you look at water, and water's H2O. So you have H2, which is basically molecular hydrogen, by the way, and you have O and you have oxygen. If you separate them, obviously hydrogen rises. Mm-hmm. It's the life molecule, right? It's the spirit molecule, it's the ascension molecule, it's the wisest of molecule, whatever you want to call it.
It's the molecule of the stars. It's the molecule of the stars and the cosmos. You can say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And oxygen, on the other hand, is about 30-something odd % larger than hydrogen. And it'll just drop to the ground. It's heavy. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, and I also noticed through all the scientific research that they kept depicting them as certain colors. So hydrogen is depicted as blue. Even the device that I use, they have like blue lights. Everything's blue. And oxygen, there used to be a device that I used to use that when you turn on oxygen mode, it would turn red. And oxygen has been depicted as red. Interestingly enough, I mean, those are almost like interesting colors because red is the color of the devil and blue is usually like the angels and, you know, whatnot. And oxygen, again, is heavier and it drops to the ground. You know, obviously when something drops to the ground, that's pretty much like when someone dies, they put them into the ground, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, the spirit would ascend. So they go their own different ways. And it almost seems to me that they're coming together. And they create water, you know, and water to me almost seems like something that stands between heaven and earth.
Yeah.
Kind of like us humans.
Yeah.
We're here on this plane between heaven and earth, but the true life, at least to me, comes from the heavens, you know, the cosmos, the spirit. It really comes from there and is injected into this thing that is dead in a way. I mean, we're kind of like a bag of flesh. And we need to have the life force in this bag. Otherwise it leaves and then the bag just rots, you know?
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense to me. It started making a lot of sense when I started realizing the connection ultimately between like health and life, because they seem to go hand in hand. And as people get older, you know, they're making way less hydrogen. They're also dehydrated a lot. And they're losing their life force. And then, of course, you know, all these things begin to almost like take over the body, you know, whether it's parasites or, you know, diseases or whatnot.
Yeah, so you could say that we are born and we have a lot of levity. And as young people, the levity is strong. And then as we get older, gravity takes over more and more, and in the end we end up in the ground. So we have the levity molecule and the gravity molecule, put them together and you have water, and you also have human beings in between. So it's the sacred trinity, it's a sacred union. So you, when you hear this, you should have some lights going on saying, okay, well, maybe when I'm getting older, I want to focus more on the levity side of life to keep myself in levity for as long as possible before I go and surrender to the gravity and jump in the grave, right? So hydrogen, and this is why, so I just want to tell people, you know, so I had these near-death experiences, and when I came back, I was obsessed with water. Like, I didn't even know why. I was just nonstop obsessed with water. And back then, many years ago, there wasn't any science around it. So I was just sitting there looking at this mysterious liquid, and I was just like, what is going on? And I just couldn't get enough of it. And I was like, so then the internet came out, and we started getting material on water, and it, lo and behold, it turns out it's a mystical liquid, and it has many spiritual properties, and is playing a crucial role in the ascension and awakening of humanity, because without water, the energies can't flow through you. So the energies are more fluid and freely moving inside the human body when you are hydrated. And so, and now we're diving deeper in and looking at the aspects of water. So it's the oxygen and hydrogen, right? And now we're finding out it has a very dualistic nature. It has a very, there's what you call the death molecule, and then the life molecule. And so now there's the levity and gravity and the Holy Trinity, because there's the sun, the earth, and humans in between. There's the oxygen, the hydrogen, and then there's the water in between, right? And just like in the Hindu traditions, they have the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. In Christianity is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And the Buddha, the Sangha, the Dharma in Buddhism. And they have, there's all the Holy Trinities like Vata, Pitta, and Kapha in Ayurveda. And, you know, we have all these, the Holy Trinities. And I feel people are just now beginning to wake up to the hydrogen side of this Trinity. It's just now beginning to dawn on them that, wait a minute, there's something called hydrogen. 90% of all the atoms in your body is hydrogen, and we have not really understood the implications of this. So you know, once we really start seeing what's going on with hydrogen, we understand that it's not just super interesting for your health, it's also extremely connected to your spiritual evolution and awakening. I'm not necessarily saying that you have to sit and drink hydrogen water all the time and pray for your enlightenment to happen, because that's not how things work. Ananda Bosman, my friend, he's talking in ways about hydrogen that I cannot even repeat, but I can try. And he is talking about hydrogen is like 8 cycles per second. And so the whole universe is 8 cycles per second. It's a resonance of 8 cycles per second. Human frequency on the earth is very close to 8 cycles per second. When you are in compassionate love, when you feel compassion in your heart, like a very elevated form of very spiritual potential of love, it's 8 cycles per second in your heart. And when healers are healing and healing energies are coming out of their hands, it's 8 cycles per second. And so and he also talked about the musical scale, that somehow these octaves are going up. Sorry, excuse me. But he talks about the 432 hertz music instead of 440 hertz music. And it's connected to the hydrogen, the 8 cycles per second. So I find it very interesting how it's all connected. So we talk about sound, music, sacred geometry, light, the planetary situation, star situation, the ascension of humanity, longevity, levity, and also how it creates the sacred bond to earth and becomes water, which is a super sacred substance, which I spoke. I have like a 20+ hour video where I'm talking about water, and so it's like it's all connected. So it's just like it's in our faces how primordial, essential, totally. It's the foundation of everything we're sitting here talking. So this is not just about some little electrical machine that's sitting on your tabletop and breathing the gas and drinking the water. It's not just about getting the hydrogen. It's about understanding the hydrogen and listening to its messages to us. And in this message, I keep on hearing purity. Take it easy. Respect and honor the process. Don't force it. Be humble, graceful. Leave your ego behind and come and dance with me. Slowly, easily, gentle, and let's see what happens. And I will unfold my magic upon you, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically upon you. But you have to treat me with respect. And this is why we needed to make the part of the hydrogen, where we need to talk about all the machines and the industry and all these things, because this is a very sacred journey we're taking with hydrogen now. We need to really honor the process and really go in and meet this molecule in whatever form it comes, in the water, in the gas, and also from the sun, and start understanding, wait a minute, that's just the external expression. It's really about compassionate love. And so once we start tuning in and feeling that love, that's when we truly connect to the universe, which is 8 cycles per second. So when we start connecting to the universe, we connect to our brothers and sisters in space, to the galactic human consciousness. And now we are talking, and that's the message from hydrogen. And by the way, that's what I had a dream 2 nights ago about all this. And I was just waking up and I was like, oh my God, it's so wild.
Really?
So it's kind of like we have these machines, we talk about health and blah, blah, but it's kind of like leading, and it's showing you another path that completely shows you a different reality, a whole different way of seeing things. And also another thing that Anand Bosman, he talks about, is the fact that hydrogen, so they created these chambers, isolation chambers, that completely blocks out all radiation, every single anything, including cosmic radiation and all that stuff. And they could block out everything except one thing. And that was the 8 cycles per second, which is the hydrogen. And the reason for that is because hydrogen travels in and out of this dimension all the time. It goes into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and whatever, who knows, and comes back again and in and out. It's in and out of existence all the time. So they couldn't block the molecule hydrogen. They cannot block it. 8 cycles per second is everywhere in the universe because it's multidimensional. So if you could make a molecule and matter on the periodic table and point at it and say, this one is related to ascension for humanity in the future, there's no other molecule than this one. This is it.
And science always thought it was just such an inert molecule that it wouldn't have any benefit, or, I mean, who would have even thought of studying it and seeing if it had any health benefits?
Yeah,
weird.
Who started studying this, actually?
So a lot of the stuff that I read was, have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France?
Yes.
And so they have these healing waters in Lourdes, right? And, you know, the Vatican has a lot of their own scientists. And there was a lot of healing stories, but they've heard healing stories before. You know, they're like, oh, people got healed from this or that or the other. But there were so many about the water of Lourdes. And so eventually they sent people over there to check the water out. And even America, I was surprised. America even sent some of their scientists, and the Vatican sent their people. And people were researching this, and they ultimately didn't find anything. They kept saying it's just water. Here, give me 1 second. So they were like, it's just water. There's nothing particularly, special about it. Then the Japanese were also sent there to study it. And they kept studying it, and America eventually left. In fact, a lot of the other scientists, from what I heard, they left. They're like, there's nothing special. There's no reason these people are getting better. It must be psychological or something. And it was actually the Japanese who discovered, because they discovered that it had high levels of hydrogen in it. And it's super hard to detect hydrogen. I mean, it's super hard. It's too tiny. And it also leaves the water. So you couldn't like bottle something up and take it to Japan and start studying it. So that's kind of how the process began. Then apparently they started making the water. They started doing their lab tests, and they started seeing that it does have an effect. And that's kind of how the whole ball, started getting rolling. Lourdes, France, of all places.
So is it still healing waters, and it's still full of hydrogen over there?
Yeah. Lourdes, France. They even discovered, by the way, other places. There's a place in Mexico called Tlacote, Mexico. There's a place in Germany. And I believe recently they discovered one other one, but I'm not 100% sure about the last one.
I can tell you, Patrick Flanagan, he was talking about the Hunza Valley, I think in Kashmir or in Pakistan or something like that, because the people they lived a long time up there, and so people went to find out what is going on, and they found what is called glacier milk. So the water was kind of like whitish, and they went inside and tested the water, and they saw it was just full of this silica, which was holding tons of hydrogen. And that's what he that he was basing his product mega hydrate on that. So this is his discovery with that. So basically they're drinking this glacial milk water, and it's full of hydrogen.
It's interesting that you mentioned that too, and I'll have to get more information about that. But apparently, there's just something that I heard very briefly, actually, about what you're just mentioning, and the Japanese have discovered something like that, and they're using already something like that. I just haven't looked into it, but something about silica and hydrogen.
Okay, as Patrick Flanagan is doing that, he has these capsules. That's actually something I would use, because I mean, if we wouldn't do the magnesium tablets, I would do the mega hydrate. I forgot all about that, actually.
Yeah, I've used mega hydrate before. It's just that because the long-term usage is where I saw the benefits, and mega hydrate was just getting too expensive for me.
Yeah, I get it.
I didn't really use it.
I got a whole bag full of them because I was friends with him. He was living over here, so I got a whole bag.
Oh, really?
I have a ton of it. So yeah, but if I had to pay full price for it, I guess I would also be a little hesitant in the long run.
Yeah, it would get pretty expensive. And it's funny, you were mentioning, just since I remembered, you were talking about, this device, like this device that I use, and obviously in my opinion, it's not really, it doesn't do anything if it doesn't have water. Water is at the source of how this thing even works. Yeah. So without water, the machine does nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's very interesting.
And also, water is so. Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to mention that I heard somebody talking about Rudolf Steiner. Have you heard of Rudolf Steiner?
No.
Okay, so he was a mystic living in 1900, in the early 1900s, and he created the Waldorf schools, and he created new ways of architecture, and he's the founder of biodynamic farming and stuff like that. So he was like giving downloads that we today are finding out is actually real. And so this guy is like a genius, and many people are following him on a very detailed scale. So anyway, I heard a presentation where Rudolf Steiner, he's talking about that, for example, water is being actually, because of its levity, because of its levitational abilities, it's actually seeking up high up in the mountains, inside the mountain. It goes up high, and then when it comes out in a spring, it's actually, he calls it the sacred tantra. It's an orgasmic experience between the earth and the sun, because it's like a cosmic eye looking into the cosmos with this, where the water is coming out. That's the cosmos, the sacred eye looking into the farther sky, or to the cosmos. And that's the sacred reunion between the earth and the sun. That's where the water comes out of the darkness. It's been brewing inside the darkness for so long, and it's matured and become what Victor Schauberger will call ennoblement. It's an ennoblement of the water. It's becoming extremely feminine, actually. And so it meets the sky for the first time. And in that moment, Rudolf Steiner, he says that is the best water you can possibly get. If you pick it up like 20, 30, 40 meters further down, it has already lost some of its magic. And so, when I started talking to you about hydrogen, I was like, this is about hydrogen. This is because what happens when it first comes out is all that hydrogen starts dissipating, right? And it's run down the rocks and North Pole, South Pole magnetic structuring, and that's great, that's beautiful, and oxygenation and all that stuff. But as it runs down, you kind of lose some of that. And so when I heard that presentation, it stuck with me for many years, and now I'm starting to see. I think it's the hydrogen, because the Earth is creating these hydrogen molecules in the center, and then water bonds with it, and oxygen bonds with it, and water is created, and it's coming in from the bowels of Mother Earth, of the Mother Divine, and it's coming out and meeting us in that sacred moment. And so when I heard that description, I found it super beautiful, and it made me think about hydrogen. I'm starting to see a lot of the small pieces of my puzzle with water that starts falling into place now that I'm kind of exploring hydrogen more and more with you. And I can't tell you how excited I am. It's like it's just an amazing molecule. I feel it's such crucial role it plays for the future of humanity. Another example. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but another example is what is happening on planet Earth right now. We're being bombarded with 4G, 5G, all that EMF radiation, etc. And is hydrogen an answer for that? You can tell me that. Is hydrogen?
In my opinion, absolutely. And the reason that I came up with, obviously there's not a ton of research on 5G, but we know that 5G is a form of radiation. And I've even heard, maybe you know more about this than I do, I've heard about cosmic radiation recently has been changing and getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
Apparently somebody's measuring it.
Yeah, we have about 500 different kinds of cosmic radiation coming in now that has never been there before. The only thing, okay, let me just say about that.
Sure.
All the branches of science, they cannot agree upon anything except one thing. Except one thing, and they're saying the fact that all these cosmic radiations are coming in, the only thing they can agree upon is that this is going to change all life on planet Earth as we know it, because it's changing the very structure and foundation of DNA in all life. So yeah, we are having a lot of cosmic radiation coming in.
And this is where I think actually hydrogen might play a role, because I did this more instinctively, and actually came from a meditation when I named my channel, The Uprising of the 144K, because part of it was about somehow, I don't know why I thought that, and I hadn't really dived deep into this stuff like other people had, that we were going to go through something cataclysmic, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were going to go through some difficult times. Obviously right now we're going through this virus thing right now. And everything I saw about hydrogen, when I was reading the scientific data, and then of course, even coming up with my own conclusions because of so much data that I had seen, it was just so protective. It was like a guardian angel or something of some sort, And what I remember seeing was, and I have some footage of it on one of my videos, is how it protects people from like radiation when they do things like the chemotherapy or radiation therapy for like cancer. And it was unreal. Like it's almost hard to believe, because you would literally see the destruction of cells if you didn't use the hydrogen and you're being bombarded with this type of radiation. And then you would see the cells that they would use hydrogen and then bombarded them with the same radiation. And they were night and day. One was all red from all the death, and the other ones had very little red. It was mostly all alive. So it went from 90% destruction to 90% preservation. It was like a complete 180. Wow. And I figured, and we all know, I think, what these treatments do to people. You know, they get really sick. They age like 10 years and, I don't know, a month or something. It's crazy, right? And I've known people who have used hydrogen, actually, who've contacted me, who have gone through chemotherapy, and they use the hydrogen because in Japan, they actually did that. And I even know actually a lady in Japan who went through this. When they do the cancer treatment, this is what's interesting. If the body is strong enough to withstand the radiation, and this is something that I'm wondering on a cosmic level, or even this virus issue, something's going to come along. And if you're strong enough to withstand it, you're actually going to grow stronger, right? Kind of like you get the antibodies and all of a sudden you can withstand this virus. So if we can withstand the cosmic radiation or whatever it is we're going to come to, we're going to be the last survivors. And I just had a vision that the last survivors were going to be people who are on hydrogen, which is maybe sounds stupid or crazy, but that was like the envisioning that I was having. I'm like, there's no way that we're going to survive without this sacred molecule that gives you, it's so adaptive. It gives you so much strength. And if you can literally get hit with so much radiation and just stand up and walk away like nothing happened, that's crazy. And that's actually what's happened. I don't know if I told you the story. This is one of the most amazing stories. This poor father, man, he emailed me, and I get these emails all the time. His poor kid, he's like 8 years old. He's got a super rare form of cancer. It's less than 1% of children get it. It's pretty much terminal. He didn't even have to go through treatment. The father was like, I'm not going to put him through the treatment. It's going to ruin the last years that he has left. But he tried all sorts of natural methods. He went to all these different cancer doctors. He's done a ton of research. And eventually he contacted me about, the hydrogen. He was eventually forced, apparently by the state. Otherwise, they said they were going to call it child abuse, to put his son on some type of conventional treatment for the cancer. And so he was really scared to put him on all the radiation and everything else. I just told him what I saw as far as research, and he's like, I'm going to do it. He put his kid on hydrogen. And apparently, this is kind of an interesting thing, is that when they hit you with all this radiation, they test your blood. And if you get super crazy weak, because that's what happens. I mean, this kid's immune system, they were like, he's not going to have an immune system. He needs to be in a very sterile environment. They got him on hydrogen. They're giving him all this radiation, and they're checking his blood. And every time they check it, they're just like, this kid's just fine. Hit him with more radiation. And they would hit him with more. And they kept testing his blood. And even his father was telling me, he's like, after a while, this kid, it was like, he said it was almost like they were trying to kill him. I mean, that's how much they were giving him. And he was doing just fine. None of his hair fell out. He was still playing around, walking around, being a kid. And it reached a point where the doctors and all the nurses literally were telling the father, like, we've never, ever seen anything like this. We've never had one patient to withstand this amount of radiation and look like your son. There's just no way. They just couldn't understand it. I remember one time, this was one of the saddest ones, because they were giving him, the cancer was in his blood, and it's just all over him, all over his body. And they took a form of chemotherapy, and they stuck it in his spine, right into the blood-brain barrier, where the fluid in the spine that goes to the brain. And they put this stuff, man, in his spinal fluid that's going to go to his brain. I mean, that's crazy to me. Like, you're going to kill this kid. And they put this in him. And the father said that after they gave it to him, he was, I guess it was an outpatient treatment that day or something, because he said on the way home, the kid's eyes were just rolling back to his head. His jaw was just dropped. He started drooling. And he said, I've never seen my son like this. And I was really concerned. Of course, the inflammation that it might cause in the brain, and just the crazy stuff they're putting in this poor kid. He said the moment he got home, he immediately put him on pure hydrogen inhalation. He's got the same device I do. And after 30 minutes, He said kid was totally normal again. He got up and started playing around and everything else.
Wow.
Because this goes straight to your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because it's shown in science to be like an anti-inflammatory, you know, if there was any inflammation, or ultimately, in my opinion, just a ton of free radical damage, a lot of oxidation, you know, that was going to be happening in the brain. And the father was just like, his father was like, I've never seen anything like that. Like, he went from the craziest I've ever seen him as far as ill, because I've never seen him be that sick, to just all of a sudden be fine in 30 minutes.
Wow.
And so it was just it's unbelievable how much it protects us. And it seems like a spirit. You know how they call alcohol spirits?
Yeah. Spirit.
Because to me, spirits seem like gases, you know, and there's so many different types of gases. And I think this particular gas, because that's what hydrogen is. It's a gas. And I think it's the most sacred of all the gases. And it seems to have, it's obviously a life-giving gas, you know?
Yeah.
And it is sacred, and it goes through anything. I mean, when you take it in, it'll reach every part of your body. Your body doesn't reject it. It doesn't say, nope, not past the blood-brain barrier or nothing. No, it goes everywhere. Yeah. And, you know, and of course it goes through metal, glass, everything else. It's, you know, and like you were saying, multidimensional.
Yeah, it can move anywhere. Also, I have seen research showing that taking large amounts of hydrogen inside your body is actually on a genetic level, like gene expressions. It switches on and off certain genes in such a way that it's actually mimicking fasting, water fasting, which is one of the most healthy practices you can do for your body whatsoever. So it's actually doing that without you fasting. And so, and I was reminded of that when you talked about the chemotherapy protection, because I know there's research out there showing that if you do fasting before a chemotherapy session and fasting right after as well, you're going to recover from the session much, much better than anybody else. And so I think there's some gene switches that hydrogen is touching that is just making sure your body is protected, even beyond just free radical protection and stuff like that. So that it's, I saw a chart once what hydrogen does inside the cell that we know, and it's just like the list is so long. It's just like it's doing so many things. It's involved in so many pathways and so many processes. It's just like it's ridiculous. So it's doing a lot more in the body than what we are even aware of right now scientifically, and we're already aware of a lot.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. I noticed that I kept reading information, but I realized nobody really knows. Nobody really knows the full-on mechanism, exactly how it works. All I noticed was that it always does something good. I never saw it do anything bad. And that's why I began to focus on the aspect of, you know, how do I use it? You know, the purity that we spoke of, because as long as it's pure, you know, I don't have to worry about taking too much of it. And usually I find it's more difficult to get enough of it more than having too much of it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, yeah, it's been a very, very interesting molecule. And I feel like there's going to be so much more to learn. The whole age of Aquarius thing, you know, I think we're going to come into the knowledge of water and ultimately hydrogen. I think we're going to become, you know, a hydrogen world. I think that's what we're destined to ultimately become.
I'm convinced. I mean, after my near-death experiences, I came back and I was just obsessed about water. And it wasn't until somebody told me later, yeah, we're entering the age of Aquarius. And I'm like, really? Wow, okay. And then I started learning how much water we have in the body, et cetera, and all that stuff. And so suddenly the lights just switched on, and I was like, okay, now I get it. And I'm having the same experience with the molecular hydrogen, because it's connected. It's just one other dimension of water. It's a maybe even more higher vibrational dimension of water. Or I don't know. I don't want to compare it. It's such a mind thing to compare. But I've been diving into the water, the holy waters, like the sacredness of water, for decades, and I can see now the parallels between everything that I learned about the sacredness of water. For example, water is intelligent. Water holds memory. Water. You can have structured water and it will do certain things for you that defies science. And then it's like, and then I also heard, if you can actually structure air, like, so the air, when it's structured and move in specific ways, that you're actually energizing the air. And so when you're breathing it in, you're getting much more prana and chi and power, energy inside your system. And I guarantee you, we can apply the same statements to hydrogen. Hydrogen is an intelligent molecule. It is working for the good. It's the molecule of ascension of light, of stars. So it is of light. And it's pro-life. It's pro-life, and we need to connect with it metaphysically and also physically. And so this is why I'm excited about it.
And there's even an interesting, this is science too, is the density of the energy and the power that hydrogen carries, even to the point of, like, even just looking at the rockets that are sent out to outer space or whatnot. They cannot fill those things up with diesel or gasoline or whatever to get them out of orbit. There's only one thing that gets these rockets going, and that's hydrogen. People don't realize that these things run on hydrogen.
I have.
Oh, yeah.
So the rocket fuel is hydrogen?
Yeah, because if you notice, have you ever seen how the rockets are all like there's ice falling off of them when they're taking off?
Yeah.
And I was always curious, like, why is that? Well, they have to keep it cold so it can be liquid hydrogen.
Ah.
Yeah. So they're using it as a fuel because it has so much energy. Crazy amounts of energy. You can't run that thing on normal gas.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It would be too heavy.
Wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's
we literally can't go to the heavens without it so far. we can't go.
I got it now. Okay, well, see, there's yet another one. You also said something that I was tripping on, which is hydrogen is created internally in your gut. Like, we're creating it inside, and oxygen we're taking in from outside. So hydrogen is an internal thing. Oxygen is an external thing. And these two combine, and now you have life on planet Earth as a human being, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I noticed. And that's why I did a lot of research too, even what helps the body, create hydrogen.
Yeah.
I think you were asking, somebody was saying, if I can't afford the hydrogen machine, how do I get hydrogen?
Yeah.
I think the best thing you can do is just eat certain foods that really, really help you generate, more hydrogen in your gut. But even then, there's something about the way, and scientists still don't understand why. And I have some theories. They don't understand why water, like when you drink hydrogen water, why it has such an effect on the body when our body produces so much hydrogen on its own. Why is the water doing this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I even have theories, like, for example, you've heard of the Masaru Emoto, the guy about showing that there's memory, within water. And one of my theories is that the very thing that's actually responding to, whether it's the words, whether the pictures, the music, whatever, I think it might be the hydrogen, actually.
Yeah.
Because life responds to life. Death doesn't really respond to death. And I think a really good example of that was another study in Japan where they would have these containers with rice and water, and little kids would enter the school every day, and they told the whole classroom, I'll tell you, the Japanese classrooms are really something else. They do some really neat things. And every student would go up to one of the jars and say, hello, good morning, happy day or something. And then they'd go to another jar and they would say something negative to it, like, you're bad rice or something, right?
Yeah.
And then the last one, they would just ignore it. And the one that did really, really well was the one with the positive, words and whatnot.
Yeah.
And affirmations. And the worst one was the one that was ignored.
Well, so that should tell you not to ignore your children.
Oh my goodness. And people, what's the worst thing you can do to somebody? Like, if they're in jail and you're going to really punish them, you put them in solitary confinement. They're just completely ignored.
Yeah.
And it makes people go crazy.
Yeah.
And so even the negative energy still had life in it, a form of life.
Yeah.
And so I think that, death sometimes seems like like nothing, like nothingness, just darkness. And so sometimes I view, hydrogen again as the thing that might be the thing that's responding literally to the input that we're giving it. Maybe, I'm not saying that's the case. It was just kind of a theory of mine. And that's why sometimes I would find myself like when I'm inhaling hydrogen or even drinking the water, the level of gratitude that I had for like, for example, this company that went so above and beyond, kind of like when we get really good supplements from a company that really went above and beyond I'm very grateful for like farmers that are not getting subsidized. They go against the grain. They're creating really good organic foods. And I'm so grateful that I can get my hands on it. I know a lot of times it's more expensive, but it's like, you know what? The fact that I can even get it, that's what I'm looking at. The fact that I can even get this thing, just like this hydrogen device, the fact that it's there and available, I'm so grateful for it. And I think that gratitude feeds the hydrogen and ultimately the chain of events, the chain reaction, because I think it starts with hydrogen. Yeah. But then because it does create a chain reaction. I mean, there was a study in Japan that showed that when you would consume this hydrogen water, it would activate certain enzymes in the body, like bring them to life. And these enzymes' job was to fight free radicals.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
so there's this chain of events.
So hydrogen is not doing all the work alone. It's just inspiring other compounds and elements in your body to do the same thing, or even better, maybe.
Exactly. That's just like Mother Nature. The sun has a trickle effect.
Yeah.
The way it affects the movement of everything. And that seems to me what it's doing in our bodies, because I only see it do good things. I haven't seen it do anything bad. And there's never been any research showing it doing anything bad.
Yeah.
And you can't say that about other stuff. Oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, most stuff has serious side effects if you take too much of it or whatever. And so, there was something I wanted to say about. Oh yeah, also the coronavirus, the COVID-19, what's going on these days, is also helping for that. So it's just helping for everything. It's the solution for everything. And the other thing is like, okay, so let's say you cannot afford a hydrogen machine and you're worried about 5G. Well, maybe there is something to be said about staying in the heart and living from compassionate love. Because if you are in the compassionate love, you are in 8 cycles per second. And when you're in 8 cycles per second, you're connecting to the hydrogen universe, to the cosmic intelligence. And maybe, because the thing is, I know there's people out there who are untouched by EMF radiation, no matter where they go and what they do. And then there's the majority who are definitely affected by it. And maybe there is something to it, in the sense of, if you are in compassionate love, if you are in a state of transcendence or just love, compassion, love, that these EMF radiation frequencies are maybe not going to do anything to you, because you're connecting to the hydrogen molecules inside your own system, and you're now activating them, and they're maybe moving in the full potential of their capacity inside of you, even without a supplement, without inhalation of anything or drinking anything or whatever, just by being in that state of compassionate love. So I feel this is very, very important, that that the conversation about hydrogen goes above and beyond just the science and just the molecule, because everything is frequency, vibration. Everything is energy, vibration, and our consciousness in the end is the generator of these frequencies and vibrations. And so we can create the state of compassionate love, which is going into total synchronicity and harmony with the rest of the universe, basically.
And I would agree with you for sure, as far as like your heart being at the proper frequency, the proper emotional state that ultimately does seem to happen with the heart. Obviously, when we get like really stressed, our heart can, beat changes, and all these different emotions seem to affect the way that our heart beats. But it's difficult to stay in this quote unquote compassionate love because of the way society affects people, having to go to work all the time and all the different stresses in life, and they really affect our emotional state, which is actually, you know what, this is interesting. Did you know that there was actually some scientific research in regards how hydrogen affects your emotional state?
No, I would love to hear.
I was shocked. When I first read it, I thought, what a bunch of garbage. This can't be real. But it ended up being real. So what they did was, it was a study originally done on mice. And what they were basically doing was they were stressing out the mice. So they were causing and inducing stress and trying to help them, or having them carry out a certain task. All right.
So they basically just gave them a normal office job.
They put them in a cubicle
in front of a computer with a boss, and that was it.
Well, see, that's exactly, I mean, this is exactly what's happening to us, right? We're being put in these emotional states to stress us out, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was surprised when they had a group where they used hydrogen. I even have some footage of some other ones. I actually have some footage of some mice that underwent chemotherapy too, and some that got hydrogen. You should see the differences. It's pretty amazing. But this particular one, they gave hydrogen to one group and they did not give hydrogen to the other group. And they found that the ones that got the hydrogen could carry out the task even under extreme amounts of stress. So they were able to get out of their maze or get their food or whatever much more effectively than these other ones who just kind of shut down from the stress. And originally I was thinking to myself, well, how in the world, are they doing something like this? How is hydrogen helping with stress? But eventually, and I don't remember if I read this on the, sorry, I'm turning on my machine. I don't remember if it was the study that concluded this or if I connected the dots, because I ended up seeing how cortisol is affected, by stress, and how hydrogen helps bring down the stress hormone.
So hydrogen lowers cortisol?
Yeah, when you have elevated levels of cortisol, it appears to actually bring down that stress hormone, because that's not very good for us.
No.
Right?
No.
And so bringing it down, for me, I connected the dots and thought, because I don't remember if the study concluded the same thing that I concluded, because I don't even know if they actually knew why this was happening. But I basically concluded on my own, it's probably helping their stress hormones, and that's why they're able to continue to do whatever it is that they're trying to get them to do. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately that's, I realized it wasn't a psychological thing. It was literally an actual scientific thing, because we are so governed by our biology.
Yeah. Every single emotion you can measure in your chemistry, in body chemistry.
Exactly.
And actually the biggest, I can tell you, the biggest problem in the world is chronic elevated inflammation. So low chronic inflammation. So basically we have a little bit of inflammation all the time, which is making us sick and get diabetes, cancer, and all kinds of things. And this chronic elevation is because of all the stress we're experiencing, drinking coffee, all the stimulants, and we're stressing around, and the Wi-Fi, EMF, all that stuff. And so the cortisol goes up, chronic elevated levels of cortisol, that creates the inflammation. And I know hydrogen lowers the inflammation, so I guarantee you it's lowering cortisol. I can almost say.
I remember reading it somewhere, but I don't want to give like 100% guarantee, but I do remember it affecting cortisol levels.
Yeah, well, that means because they have linked chronic stress and chronic low chronic inflammation. They have linked that to all the major diseases in the world, and so that means hydrogen is addressing all of it.
Yeah. And I thought, and also I think we're going back to the 5G thing you're talking about, and whether hydrogen could potentially help. Because is there research where they bombard somebody with 5G and they're drinking hydrogen? I don't think there's any research like that.
No, but I can tell you, I know quite a lot about this. And what happens when you get a lot of Wi-Fi and 5G is extreme high amounts of free radical are being released into the cells. And hydrogen is a scavenger of free radicals. So it is. There's only two products that I recommend people for EMF protection. One is hydrogen, the other one is magnesium. Period. That's it.
And I mean, I got even one of these things from Japan. I mean, these things are for like the cell phones or whatever. I don't know if you've ever seen these, but and they have some scientific data. But to be honest, it's not what I really rely on. I
Good.
rely on my hydrogen use regularly,
Yeah.
to protect me from the 5G and the way that it probably affects my cells. And like you said, the free radical damage seems to cause a chain of events.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the antioxidative power of hydrogen seems to, keep these things from happening or reversing them.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how it works.
Yeah, yeah, it is. There was a study done on Dr. Klinghardt. He talks about it. So there was a study done on chickens. There's 2 chicken coops, and one chicken coop were bombarded with wireless radiation, etc., and the other chicken coop were bombarded with the same wireless radiation, etc. One chicken coop did not get any protective devices like this one you have, and orgonite and pyramids and shungite and Q-links and you name it, all these machines, all these devices, bio this and bio that, quantum this, quantum that. They used that on the other chickens. So basically, the chickens that got all these protective devices around, they were just walking around doing their thing, and they were laying eggs, and they were laying more eggs than normal, and they were totally fine. The other chickens that didn't get any protection, they were hiding in certain corners, and their egg production were cut in half. So they concluded that, of course, this stuff works, right? But then they wanted to keep the experiment going just to see the long-term effect of it, because they wanted to see when the chickens start dying, etc.
Uh-huh.
And lo and behold, the chickens that had all these devices, they all died before any of the other ones died.
Huh.
Why? Because these chickens, they got a false sense of security. All the messages that the body sends that there's something wrong were just not being sent out. So the damage was still happening, but you felt fine in the process. And so all the chickens died. And the other ones that got radiated, they lived longer than any of all the others. And this is Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt who present this, and he referred to a study. I don't have the study here, but this is real stuff. And so people put stuff on their phone, and they sit and talk with it, and they can feel, I don't get a headache anymore. That's great. But it's actually their own body's immune system that doesn't get activated anymore. The damage is still happening. And so basically, you're just going to create your cancer faster by using these devices. And I'm telling you, I'm getting 10, 15 emails almost daily from people who wants me to look at their quantum this and shield that and all stuff, all kinds of devices. And I'm like, if you are willing to bet your life on it, go ahead and buy it. And also spend all your money. The only thing that works for EMF protection is shielding, meaning turn off the stuff or have an actual shield, like a Faraday cage between you and the device, or put your mobile phone in aluminum foil, etc. Stuff like that. Don't get if you can receive a phone call, you're getting the radiation, no matter what you're telling me. Period. And so. But so that's the first protection that I'm telling people, just shield yourself. The second thing I'm saying is make your body resilient, make it strong so it can actually handle the assault on your body. When all is done and you can do nothing about it, meaning let's say you have to fly somewhere and whatever, there's nothing you can do. Load up on hydrogen, load up on magnesium. Magnesium, because there's something called ionic calcium ion-gated calcium channels in the surface of the cell, and these calcium channels starts pumping in tons of calcium inside the cell because they get excited and starts just overproducing because of the electric charge coming in. And so all the cells are being bombarded with too much calcium inside. And what is that? That's Alzheimer's, that's diabetes, that's inflammation, that is cell death, that's cancer, that's all these things. The only thing that can pull this calcium out of the cell again is magnesium. Magnesium and calcium work together. So you gotta have to load up on the magnesium to get the calcium out, and the hydrogen to protect yourself from the free radical damage. So these two are crucial for EMF protection. And if you can sit and breathe like you do, and if you can drink this water every day, you are in a good place. Like this is then you're, if you're living in a big city, you have to be on this stuff because there's 15 Wi-Fi signals around you all the time. So, so this is my advice is to people with the EMF. I'm big on EMF because I think EMF is 5G is a bigger danger for humanity than this COVID-19 has ever been and ever will be. So it's serious business, and hydrogen is a key essential role in this. Key, and so you know that's another. It's just like hydrogen seems to have the answer for so many things. It's crazy. It's just
that's
wild.
That's why I was so impressed by it, and you know, like my whole protocol. I used to do some really complex ones. That were just, they required way too much time and way too much money, and it just sucked. And when you were sick, it was hard to carry it out too. You know, like I was doing this one protocol from this guy who basically you had to juice like a gallon of, you had to like literally make fresh juice every day, 1 gallon of it that I had to consume. I was living off all these juices and just all these things. It was just way too complicated, way too much. And then, of course, you know, hydrogen was so much easier, you know, and then I just make a smoothie or something. I mean, it was just so much easier and a lot cheaper, actually, and more powerful too, you know. But what's interesting, actually, when you're mentioning too about the 5G, if you look at this is a really interesting thing to look at if you ever want to see something interesting. If you pull up the benefits of glutathione and you put them right next to hydrogen, they look like, well, there's a big list of them that look like identical, because they're both, you know, like an antioxidant. One of the interesting things that I remember reading about hydrogen is that if you have too low of glutathione levels, so like this is an interesting thing I remember reading, a lot of people with cancer and people who definitely go through like the chemotherapy or the radiation, they get completely depleted of glutathione. Okay. Because glutathione is also functioning as a protective mechanism for the body, very similar to hydrogen. Mm-hmm. Though they do have their differences, because if you look at the size of the molecule, you'll find this interesting. I wish I had the chart for you. Antioxidants come in different sizes. Mm-hmm. So they're not all the same size, whether it's vitamin C, whether it's glutathione, CoQ10, which is actually a really big molecule, and then hydrogen is super tiny. So glutathione maybe can do some of the same things, but it doesn't have the penetrating power that hydrogen does. But I did find it interesting that hydrogen would bring your glutathione levels back to where they should be, which is interesting, which is very important. Yeah, because I remember reading somewhere, if somebody had too high of glutathione, which is not good for you either, because some people will want to like supplement glutathione all the time. And not only that, but you want the kind of glutathione that your body naturally makes, because it's kind of like your own body's natural testosterone, or if you're feeding your body extra testosterone, right? Mm-hmm. You want the kind that your body naturally makes. And so when the glutathione levels are too high or no good, well, hydrogen would actually bring them down if they're too high, or bring them up if they're too low. So a sense of balancing, and which is nice, because it seems like hydrogen brings your body to a nice homeostasis where it can do the things that it needs to do properly. Mm-hmm. You know, so if we are being bombarded by 5G, there's really no doubt in my mind that it's going to affect our glutathione levels.
Absolutely.
You know? And so instead of trying to supplement glutathione, which doesn't necessarily have the same effect, because it's like a key in a hole, you have to have the exact key for the exact hole. And hydrogen seems to be like the master key, actually, you know, and it can bring and affect your body like that. Go ahead.
Also, glutathione, if you take it orally, it's not going to work, because your digestive acids are going to destroy it. So you have to do IV or under the tongue, like liposomal or something like that. First of all. Second of all, there is a way to boost up your glutathione even without hydrogen. You can do coffee enema. If you do a very strong, powerful coffee enema, you're boosting it up by 2,000% as a as a blast of glutathione. Also, fasting boosts up glutathione. Again, hydrogen is a fasting mimicking molecule. And so I see, again, a correlation between hydrogen switching on the beneficial healing modalities in the body. The body, when you're fasting, the body starts to say, okay, you're not eating? Okay, I'm going to start cleaning up. Today is like clean the whole house day today. That's fasting, right? So the body just starts to really clean out, and that glutathione levels go up like crazy. And so you can still, in a fed state, you can take hydrogen and actually activate all these triggers and metabolic triggers in your body at the same time. It's really, really interesting that you can do that.
And to respond to that, I mean, I would say that, for example, I mean, yeah, if you can do a coffee enema, great. But how much work is that, right? Every single morning, you know, you have to wake up and put coffee in your butt. I mean, it's just like, it's not going to be this.
It's not a simple process.
Go to Starbucks and say, hey guys, can you activate my glutathione? No.
By the way, have you ever done hydrogen enemas, by the way?
No, you know, and I actually had, you know, a theory about that. Here, hold on 1 second. Sorry, I got people all of a sudden walked in here. So one of the things that I actually had theories about also was something like a hydrogen enema, because that hasn't been researched. And I really think that there might be something really important potentially there.
Yeah.
And the other one is, gosh, there was a couple of them that I had ideas about. And now I can't, I'm kind of losing it right now.
I've heard of ozonating your ears. People are putting ozone in the ears. And so when I heard that, I was thinking, what about hydrogen in the ears?
Oh, that would be interesting. I would guess that the ozone's really good at breaking things down.
Yeah.
So, and it kills stuff. So maybe it would break down the wax or something. I don't know, in the ear. Oh, you were talking about fasting. Yeah, now I remember. Because you were saying, okay, coffee enemas. It's like, yeah, that would be, I mean, I've done enemas before, and it's not easy, you know, to do something like that every day, you know, to be in that kind of routine.
Yeah. I've done that too. I actually, at one point, I did it 4 times per day, and it was, you don't want to continue doing that. That's crazy.
See, that's what I mean is I went through so many different modalities when I was trying to heal, and it was just like everything was so challenging and difficult. And I mean, you tell somebody who has 2 kids, a full-time job, it's like, hey, go do 4 coffee enemas a day, juice a full gallon of just freshly squeezed juices. It takes you 4 hours to do. I mean, people don't have time for this.
Yeah.
And then go fasting. I mean, have you ever tried to fast and go to work your 40, 50, 60 hours a week? Man, it's impossible. You won't have the energy, you know, to carry it out. Yeah. And that's what I loved, obviously, about, you know, something like this, like hydrogen. I didn't have to go to that extreme. But I do have one. This is the theory I was going to mention to you, because this is something that I really wanted to carry out. I was actually going to do it when I was going to go to Japan, and I still want to go. I still plan on going, but this whole coronavirus thing has changed a few things, you know, the traveling and everything.
Yeah.
Which is doing fasting while using hydrogen.
Yes.
And I have a very strong suspicion it's going to just take things up to a whole other level.
Well, I can tell you there's doctors out there promoting that right now, and they're saying exactly that. They're saying it's taking it to a whole new level when they're just pushing the hydrogen capsules, the tablets. But they're talking about drinking hydrogen water while you're fasting all the time. I totally believe it's crazy, awesome, wild.
Because I'm talking about taking nothing in, like none of these. I mean, if there's cellulose or I don't know what's in the pill, you know, all the little ingredients in the pill. I mean, I'm talking nothing, literally just water. Mm-hmm. And then at some point I was going to shift gears and even go off the water and do the extreme dry fast and just do the inhalation.
Yeah.
You know, and try that. And I was going to combine it with, I was going to go to this place in Japan to use natural hot springs also. And the cold springs, because they have hot and cold.
Yeah.
And the reason, now this is just my theory behind it. I saw some interesting stuff about the gut. And I saw this stuff where they have like how much activity is in the gut, you know, due to your microbiome, right?
Yeah.
and you have more of it. Like there was even an interesting, when I first read the study, I thought it was a bunch of garbage, and then I researched and it turned out it was legitimate. Have you heard of the potato study, potato diet for the gut?
No.
It's crazy, right? So they show the gut flora, and you can totally rebuild your gut in many ways by just eating. You have to do it a certain way. You have to, like, you steam the potatoes, then you have to cool them down for like 12 or 24 hours or something, and all you're allowed to eat is these potatoes. And I thought, that's so stupid. There's no way this is going to work. But sure enough, it did. I mean, they were measuring all the really good gut bacteria in the gut, and I couldn't believe it, right? Well, one of the things that I've also seen is how hydrogen affects the gut, and it does such amazing stuff for the gut. The stuff that I've seen. I mean, I've seen people who had all sorts of inflammatory issues with the gut. People who couldn't even have something like milk, you know, that they were lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
They could literally have milk again after healing their gut with hydrogen. I was like, what? It was crazy. People who were gluten intolerant, all sorts of different things that were related to the gut. I knew people with, I know some people personally who have certain allergies, or even allergies to, like, one of my friends has allergies to cats, got on hydrogen, no more allergies. He's got his cat in the house all the time.
Wow.
So just the craziest thing.
You cannot explain this in biochemistry, what that is about. You cannot explain it.
I think I have a theory, and eventually they probably will explain it, because in Japan they're also doing, have you heard of fecal implants?
Yeah, I've done it.
Oh, okay. So in Japan, they'll literally take somebody who's got like diabetes and somebody who seems to be immune to diabetes, and they'll take out the bacteria, clean it all up, and put it in the other person, and their diabetes will go away. Like the craziest stuff they're doing with fecal implants in Japan right now. And so
I did it myself, because when I had my accident with my arm, they put me on so many antibiotics for 2.5 months that I was just like, I just knew my gut was in trouble. And so our friends, they have a little child, and super healthy child, and I did fecal transplant, and it totally fixed my gut. I started having a normal digestion after that again. And
so you took their baby's fecal matter and put it inside of you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's a little different. I think we're talking about something a little different.
Well, the principle is the same. What they do in Japan, what they do in clinics, is that they are purifying and cleaning it, and they're doing something to it. But you can do it in many ways. But anyway, it's a little bit disgusting to sit and discuss here. But let me put it this way: it works. It works. You just need to find a healthy donor. If your gut is in trouble, and you know a healthy donor of a very young, someone who hasn't taken or gotten any antibiotics and chemicals and all that stuff, then this might be a way out for you. And I'm the kind of guy, I want to try everything if it makes sense to me, and this made sense, so I tried that, and I'm happy I did it.
And I told you the numbers, I think, that I remember seeing about how long it takes to heal the gut after antibiotics. That it can take like a year and a half to like really rebuild the gut again.
It depends. There's actually research going. So if you, I'm going to tell you something crazy, and it's actually related to hydrogen.
Okay.
In Africa, they took this African tribe that had this microbiome with 900 different kinds of species of bacteria, which is a lot more than what the Western man has. And they were just like, okay, so they lived out there in nature, and they had this amazing gut microbiome. Then they gave them antibiotics just as a test, and they just hammered them with antibiotics, and they killed the whole gut microbiome. And these guys, they just ran around and continued their lifestyle, and 5 days later, it was back to normal.
5 days?
5 days. Wow. 5 days. And they found out that it has to do with how much time you spent in the sun. Now, check this out.
That I believe.
When you go in the sun, when you're laying in the sun, something happens with the hydrogen sun that is talking to you with the photonic cosmic information that actually activates your microbiome. And they have seen and found out that there's species of microbiome in your gut that did not exist before, but when you go in the sun long enough, often enough, they suddenly appear out of nowhere. They just start to exist inside of you from the sunlight. And so this is a crazy information, and it is related to hydrogen because the sun is a hydrogen sun. And so
I think you're
yeah, no, go on.
I'll say I definitely think that you're hitting on something, because I really think that the way that the sun even just hits the earth, I think it's injecting it somehow with this life force, and it begins to activate, whether it's the bacteria, the enzymes, all the different activity that happens and all the life that comes from it. So I think the same thing goes for us. You know, like you said, the sun, it penetrates our body and it activates certain, I guess, movement, activity, life, which ultimately comes from hydrogen. So it's also interesting that if you drink the hydrogen water or inhale the hydrogen gas, you're almost taking in like pure light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would almost be curious about, because I know that getting a lot of sunlight, we can get burnt, right? It can burn us. It can cause some damage to us, right?
Well,
our
it
skin.
depends. If your diet is, if you have a good diet, then you can stay in the sun for much longer than a normal person. It's actually only us domesticated people who are artificially living in our concrete blocks, etc., that because our ancestors were outside in the sun 6 to 8 hours a day, no problem. But we cannot do it anymore because of our diet and our resilience in our body. So it's very interesting to observe. And actually, you can build your way up to being able to handle much more sunlight during the day.
Well, that's what I was going to say about, like, I don't know if you've seen the research on how hydrogen protects the skin and the effects that it has on the skin.
No.
And so I was thinking, if you're using hydrogen and getting the sunlight, can it allow us to not only get greater benefit from the sun or be able to withstand more, you know?
Absolutely. I'm 1,000% sure about that, because if you are loaded up on antioxidants, an intelligent molecule, then the free radical damage you create in the skin from the sun is nothing. So because I can tell you that there's research showing that if you have a lot of antioxidants in your diet, you can handle the sunlight much more than if you don't.
And that brings me to actually another one of my theories, as far as like, I know that they've shown, this is a scientific fact where they'll take like an apple and that's organically grown and one that's not organically grown, and they'll measure the levels of antioxidants within the fruit. And they notice that the organic food has much higher levels of antioxidants. And I believe in the future, because I just think this is what's going to happen, because we're going to become a hydrogen world, hydrogen society, that they already know. I have a friend who their daughter she was in a science fair, and he asked me, he goes, do you mind if she were to use the hydrogen water for the science fair? I'm like, no, that'd be great. And so they had plants, and some of them they would give just normal water, and then they were exact same plants, everything was the same. And then some she would do the hydrogen water, and the hydrogen water ones were just going nuts. Yeah. She ended up actually winning the science fair, even though people didn't understand what the hydrogen water was. They kept asking, like, we don't understand. What do you mean hydrogen water? You know? And so the plants went nuts. And I always look at plant life or even animal life and how they get affected by something, because that's the way that I think we get affected too, you know. And I know that Japan, well, they use it for like some professional athletes, you know, the hydrogen water. And there's a little secret information. I won't say too much about it because I was asked not to say too much detail. All I'll say is that it's being used in some animals, and the results are pretty dramatic, and we'll be hearing more and more about that in the future. I could maybe tell you off camera if you want.
Yeah, sure. Another thing that is very interesting, and this is where it tells me that there's more going on. When hydrogen is infused into the water, something else is going on than just the presence of the molecule. Because if you water plants with hydrogen water, this hydrogen is evaporating very fast. It's gone. So when you put the water, it's kind of gone 5, 10, 20 minutes later, right? And it takes time for the plant to absorb these water molecules. However, it still grows like crazy, right? So what is going on? What is this about? And I think there's something to be said about the microbes in the soil that are being fed this hydrogen, and they start being activated in a certain way. And I just want to point out, because now that we talk about the microbiome, one crucial piece of information that people need to know: if you look inside your gut microbiome and you're finding all these beneficial bacteria inside your gut, and they're running around doing their job, and they're all nice people, and they're doing what they're supposed to. If you turn on a Wi-Fi router right next to you and a mobile phone or whatever, they can go in and look at the very same bacteria, the same species, the same bacteria, suddenly running around making holes in your intestinal walls and doing all kinds of things. It totally changes its behavior. It's also changing its own chemistry, when it eats, what it poops out. So basically your beneficial bacteria turns into monsters, and they're now working against your body, and welcome to autoimmune diseases, etc. Right? So now we're talking about, if Wi-Fi can do that to your bacteria, then if you turn it off and go in the sun, it can do something else, right? And so it is pretty obvious that you want to deal with your microbiome, you want to improve it, you give it the life-giving forces, so hydrogen, the life-giving forces. So that explains to me, when you drink this water, that it changes the gut microbiome. It's actually just making them nicer. They become nice people.
Well, it also does. It appears to.
Maybe drinking hydrogen water and inhaling it makes you into a more nice person as well.
Well, they even know that it feeds a lot of good gut bacteria too. So just like the potato diet, it because of the way it feeds the gut bacteria, because whatever you eat affects your microbiome.
Yeah.
You can feed certain bacteria and they'll flourish if you're feeding certain things. And hydrogen seems to feed the good gut bacteria. I've even found it to be more beneficial than I used to do all the the probiotics and the enzymes and all this stuff. And I've seen some research about that. And yes, there's certain benefits to it, but I found that hydrogen was much more beneficial to rebuilding the gut all over again. Mm-hmm. And I'd even be curious as to, there's so many studies that need to be done, but I'd be curious, like the one you're talking about, exposure to EMF or exposure to like the cell phone device, how it affects the microbiome. But what if you had hydrogen water first, or if you're inhaling it, seeing if it would protect the way that they act, because they see some of it already, even just in mice, the way that they get affected by so many different things and how hydrogen seems to affect them. So that would be an interesting, definitely an interesting study.
I'm absolutely convinced it's gonna definitely improve it. It's not an excuse to continue radiating yourself, but I definitely think I can already say that I'm convinced it's going to show positive results. If you sit in Wi-Fi and you drink hydrogen, it's going to help you. It's going to protect you for sure. There was something else I wanted. Oh yeah, with the gut microbiome, they found out that, for example, eating fibers. When you're eating fibers, you can actually not digest this. The body cannot digest fibers, but your gut microbiome can eat it. And so it starts eating it, and then what they poop out, they're pooping out hydrogen. And so and the body is using this hydrogen, and that's the health beneficial from fibers, because they actually they actually somehow created this bacterial strains that don't poop out hydrogen when they get fiber, and suddenly there was no benefits whatsoever from eating fibers. So basically, the benefit from eating fibers in your diet has to come from the bacteria that is pooping out the hydrogen for you. So it's all connected.
And it also depends actually the kind of fiber. I remember reading a study about the kind of fiber that you consume. So because they tried to use things just like psyllium husk fiber and different fibers, and your body wasn't producing the hydrogen. So they were kind of confused. And then it led to a big discovery about how the fibers from specific fruits and vegetables, and how every fiber from every fruit and vegetable, so the fiber from a blueberry, the fiber from an apple, spinach, they're all different. Or you can't just say the word fiber because it's too generalized, when just like saying the word bacteria. There's so many kinds of bacteria, it's too vague.
Yeah.
And so they found that each one of these fruits and vegetables would affect the body differently. And they would really tend to feed good gut bacteria, though, is what they ultimately found too. And that's why I always make those really big smoothies full of, you know, a lot of fruits and vegetables to get all that stuff in me.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And also, when you go to a waterfall in the forest, and there is a big waterfall, and you feel this electricity in the air, that's also that's the ions, and there's also this free hydrogen. You can, so it's interesting when you drink hydrogen water, it feels like it's fresh. The feeling is freshness, right?
It feels very, you know, I've had a lot of people say this, and I've noticed it myself when I make the water a certain way, it feels really light, and it feels like it's really penetrating. I remember actually one of my dad's relatives, she really wanted to get on the hydrogen water, but she said, I don't think I can drink the amount that I would need to drink in order for it to be real therapeutic. She said, because I have a hard time drinking the water, and it's hard to swallow. And I told her, I said, I don't think you're going to have a problem, but I mean, I don't know, but I'm always curious. And she started doing it, and she said, I don't know what it is. This water's so easy to drink. And I've had so many people tell me that same thing, not just one, two, three. I mean, countless people. They're like, it's so much easier to drink. And it feels just lighter, which, I mean, obviously hydrogen is lighter. It probably is technically lighter.
I think it's light.
Yeah, exactly. See, I think we're literally consuming stardust or stars, you know, the power of the sun. I mean, we're drinking it, we're inhaling it.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, we're drinking the power of the sun. Wow, that's powerful. And also,
our bodies. Oh, go ahead.
I saw in your interview with Santos Bonacci, he was mentioning that of all the molecules in the periodic table of elements, there's all of them are having a wobble, like when they're rotating, just like the Earth is having a wobble, except hydrogen. Hydrogen has this pure, perfect spin. And when he said that, it's like, oh my God, because I mean, that it must be special. It must just, like, it's doing everything it can to be standing out in the crowd.
It's so well balanced. And that's what it seems to bring to the body. It seems to bring you back into balance. I mean, you can get out of balance all the time. You can get stressed out and get out of balance. You could have circumstances, but it seems to bring at least your biology back into balance, which I think helps us bring our mind and our heart back into balance if we're seeking that.
Yeah.
You know? It really does help us. It's an amazing molecule. I still, you know, I really believe very strongly it's going to transform the world. And I think that it'll help us withstand more, just like I said, this cosmic radiation that I think is going to affect our DNA. It's really going to affect our body. And if we can survive it and become stronger due to this negative effect possibly on the body, and we can strengthen from it, then it could potentially be a really good thing. You know, but sometimes, what's that saying? What doesn't break you makes you stronger or something?
Yeah.
You know, and I think hydrogen gives us much greater resilience, mostly in our biology, but our biology affects our mindset. Our biology even affects our heart. You know, it's like there's two different angles that you can come at something from. You know, and hydrogen is just a helping hand. Even if you just do it not for any spiritual reasons, but even if you just do it for health, you know, you can do it for many different reasons. It seems to fit into many different components. I was going to do it personally. The whole thing in Japan with the fasting, for me, it was going to be a spiritual journey, and I wanted to see how it would affect the body. I mean, I've done some crazy things with hydrogen, just out of pure experimentation, and even stuff I didn't want to do, but I did it because I wanted to see if it worked.
What? Like what?
I did one where I would not move. Like, I would literally just lay in bed and try to atrophy my muscles. I know that sounds so crazy, but I would use the hydrogen water and I would inhale. Man, it was amazing. My muscles, they like virtually no atrophy when I know they should have, you know, because I remember being not unable to move one time when I was really young for 2 weeks. And when I stood up, and I was really athletic, when I stood up, my legs were so weak. And I went 3 months, maybe more. I went a very long time just in bed, not moving, not using my legs. And I was able to stand up like nothing happened when I was ready to stand up and move.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was unbelievable. And there is research. I mean, there is research now showing how it can help with like muscle atrophy. And I think it could help so many people, you know, anybody who's ill. In fact, that was another interesting story. There was this like 90-something-year-old lady who she could barely get up and walk for like, I think it was maybe 5 minutes. And she would get real dizzy and she couldn't do it for very long. And her daughter worked in the medical field and she got her on all sorts of stuff, but eventually she got her on the hydrogen. And that was the one thing the mother, she just all of a sudden was walking around having a ton of energy. And nurses that used to care for her, they're like, what the hell did you give her? Because we've never seen her like this. Mm-hmm. And even the mother she was the one who told her daughter, she said, of all the stuff you brought me, she was really big like these chaga mushrooms or something. Yeah. And all these crazy supplements. I mean, so many things she had given her mother, and her mother just told her, this is the one. Whatever this is, she didn't even know what it was. She's like, I'm just drinking this water. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to use it. And she definitely noticed the difference. Yeah. You know, so it's been mind blowing. It's going to change the world, you know. But we're literally consuming, like you said, the power of the sun, you know, and we're designed to. That's the interesting part. Our bodies are designed for hydrogen. It's not like it's something it doesn't like.
No, inside the cells, each mitochondria is actually using hydrogen for creating ATP. So the body is on a very foundational level. It's using hydrogen. So it's totally, yeah.
It loves it.
It loves it. And so I don't know, is there anything else we need to touch in upon here today?
No, I think we touched on. I'm sure we'll probably think about a lot of things later. We're like, oh, why didn't they say this?
Yeah, we should have talked about this and that, and I wrote it down, a lot of stuff over here, but I don't know if did I touch in on it.
I'd almost be curious. I really would love to see more like brain scans, because I know how they're doing a lot of brain scans right now with like a lot of different like psychedelics, for example, or just how different medications affect the brain. I'd be really curious how hydrogen inhalation affects the brain. That would be so awesome. I would love to see something like that.
Yeah, me too. I would love to see the world start doing some real full-on focus on hydrogen. Let's get people excited about it. So to everybody listening who is enjoying this, and if you want this machine, then please help me get this machines too, because I cannot afford it. But if you use this coupon code below this video and you order this machine, with this coupon code, when there's 10 people who have bought this machine, I can get one for free. So please help me to do that. And also, if you use the coupon code, what you can do is you add in this bag that can hold the hydrogen water in this bag for 2 weeks in the fridge, so it doesn't evaporate or disappear. So you can bring this with you when you're going out to do something. You add that into your cart. When you buy the machine, you get that bag for free. So you get something out of it, plus you are supporting me in helping me in getting this machine too. And I can't wait to try to drink this water. I'm looking so much forward to it.
Yeah, you're gonna love it, brother. I'm literally in love with my machine. Every time if I plan my trip to Japan, for example, you know, you think of all the things you got to take, but it's always like, okay, the machine, it's literally going to be in my hands. I don't want it in the suitcase, get broken. I can't survive without this machine. I hate to say it, but yeah, I can't survive without it. I don't know what I would do without it. I love it. It's that and my water filter. You know, these two things are so important. Or
well, awesome. That's awesome. You know, if it works, it works. Then we're just going to have to stick with it. And hydrogen is not it's not a fad, it's here to stay. I guarantee you in 500 years from now, we're still going to be talking about hydrogen.
Oh yeah. All right, brother. Well,
okay. Well, thank you for the third and last installment, last for now installment. And we sent all this out, and we hope people are going to enjoy it.
Yeah. I wonder, in the ancient writings, you ever hear about the water of life?
I don't know the particular scripture or writing you're talking about, but I heard that sentence many times.
Because I literally think, this is what it is, the water of life.
It is. It is the water of life. So let's spread the good news, the good word, and I hope you will get on the water of life out there as well as soon as possible. Okay, ciao.